Hi everyone, Chris here from IELTS Advantage, and today we have another success story. So we have Rossella, even though I'm mispronouncing that name, or Rosie as she said to call her. So can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. I'm Rossella, or Rosie, as everyone knows me. I'm from Italy, but I've been living in Australia for the last 5 years nearly.
Excellent. And can you tell everyone a little bit about your IELTS journey, your IELTS story?
hmm So my journey with IELTS started in 2016. At that time, I had been living in Australia for nearly 2 years, but I was applying for my student visa. And because I had to start my master of teaching, they required me a very high score. So the first time that I attempted the IELTS was in May 2016. But to be honest, like I didn't prepare anything. I was very stressed. Time was running low, and I just tried because I had to. In terms of score, I had, let me check because I have all my papers here. I had 7 in listening, 6.5 in reading, 6 in writing, 6.5 in speaking, with an overall band of 6.5.
Hmm. So you needed a band 7 and everything for your masters, is that correct?
Yes, Chris, my university required me, I think it was at least 7.5 in speaking and listening,
Hmm.
and 7 in writing and reading.
So quite high then.
So, yes, very high. And what I did at the time, I resit the test 1 month later, just because my visa was about to expire in August, so I didn't have much time. And when I resit it, let me see the score. I had 7 in listening, so the same. 7 in reading, so 0.5 more. 5.5 in writing, so I lowered it, and 7.5 in speaking.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was very happy about it.
Okay.
Speaking.
So what would you say were your main struggles? What were the things that caused you the most difficulty?
Over the time, Chris, writing for sure. Because when apart from these first two attempts, when I retried properly the IELTS was last year in July, and my struggle was writing definitely. Even because, I mean, after spending 4 years in the country, my listening has improved a lot. My
Hmm.
speaking skills have improved a lot. But writing, like, I could not understand how my high score uni, considering that I had like all written assignments, was so contrasting with the score that I had in writing for the
Hmm.
IELTS.
It's a very, very common problem that we see with people who move to an English speaking country, and their listening and speaking scores are sky high because they're listening and speaking every day. You know, if even if you're not speaking to people often, your listening is definitely improving, and you're practicing your listening, you're practicing your speaking pretty much on a daily basis. But it's very rare for someone to be writing consistently, and that can often cause the problem where you might be practicing. You know, if you live in Australia for 5 years, you might have thousands and thousands of hours of listening and speaking practice, but maybe 2 hours of writing practice, maybe just text messages and things like that, and emails. But very rarely are people writing essays and reports unless that's to do with your job, really. So what we do is really have to teach people from the ground up how to write, and how to write in English and satisfy the IELTS requirements.
And also, Chris, if I can say something, I think there's a misconception about what the academic writing is for the IELTS and what is the academic writing for university. I mean, they're
Mhm.
two completely different things,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, when you write for university, it's like you have to write a report, very formal. Whereas, yes, IELTS is formal, the academic module, but you're still communicating with, how can I say, the average person. I'm not sure
Exactly.
whether it's what I want to say.
The way I would describe it is, IELTS writing is like high school level, and university writing is like university level. So a lot of people misunderstand and think that IELTS writing requires some very high level language and you must do certain things and all of it. It's just not really true, to be honest. What they're looking for is, and this is what everyone should be thinking about, is if this person moves to an English speaking country and works in an English speaking country, could they clearly communicate in writing with anybody in that country? And if you always think about that and focus just on clear communication, then you're going to be in a very, very good position. And then university writing is a different thing entirely. I remember when I was doing my master's, I had to go to classes on how to write dissertations and all those things that I just had no idea. It is a particular skill, but that is not what IELTS is looking for, I don't think. Um,
True.
yeah.
And also, I think what I was told once, even like from my friends, I know like you're not happy when we say, a friend of mine said this, but like what I was told is that, and I think you said this in your videos too, if an examiner has to read your sentence, has to stop to reread your sentence more than once, that means that there's a problem in the communication, and this is not good for your.
Yeah, I wouldn't say more than once, but I'd say that like if you look at a band 9 essay, one of the hallmarks of a band 9 essay is you can give that to a stranger on the street. Like I could walk out of my house and give someone a band 9 essay and I could ask them, what does this person think about the question? And they would be able to read it once and immediately tell me what it is. But a band 6, band 5 essay, they have no idea because they look at it and there's so many problems with grammar, with vocabulary, with coherence, with cohesion, with task response. And that's really the difference. So your friend is right. I wouldn't say that you must only read the sentence once, but if you just think about one aspect, grammar, if there's multiple grammar mistakes in it, an examiner or a native English speaker will have to read it multiple times to try and get your head around it. And I often call it a headache essay, because an essay that has multiple mistakes and is trying to do multiple different things and is very confused gives the examiner a headache because you have to read it so many times. That's not a complaint or anything. It's just what I call it. But the clearer your writing can be, and the clearer your message can be, and the clearer your communication, the better. So what were the particular things that we identified about your writing, that when we told you this is the reason why you're not getting the score you need? Can you remember any of the particular things?
Yes. By the way, I tended to overcomplicate the sentence, and this is because of my first language. I mean, Italian is a very complex and complicated language, so we tend to go around things and we don't get straight to the point. And
Yeah.
this was one of the problems.
Not just Italian. A lot of other languages are like that, and a lot of cultures are like that. Um, One of the things that, like my wife, for example, is Vietnamese. One of the things that she found with people here is we are straight to the point, like a little bit blunt, and we don't even know we're doing it, and that's reflected in our language and how we write essays and how we speak to people as well. Whereas other cultures are a little bit more indirect, and we don't do that, and that is reflected in the language and reflected in how you communicate, which is a really interesting area. How language reflects culture is really interesting, but I could talk about that for a long time, but let's stick to IELTS.
And this led me, of course, to choose, for instance, when I was looking for the right word, I would choose very complicated words that were not like, that didn't reflect the
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I messed up, even
Mm-hmm.
like grammar,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. But my biggest problem, Chris, which was the reason why I joined your course, was that I didn't have any clarity about the structure, because
Mm-hmm.
at that point, like, I had been following one tutor, then another one, then the third one, and the fourth, and I ended up like doing a mess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is the worst thing you can do, guys. Stick to one method. and
Yeah,
trust it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've made a couple of notes here. So one of the things is, you probably heard me say this hundreds of times, but keep it simple. It's a natural thing when you fail a test to think that the reason why you failed it was because it was too simple, or your language was too simple. And the solution is to make everything more complicated. But by making everything more complicated, you increase the number of mistakes, you reduce the clarity. So it's often a struggle for me with students to convince them that this is the solution. But when they start to make their everything clearer and simpler, then their scores improve. And then you also mentioned structure. Structure is important, but there's no magic structure. You could use 4 different structures and get a band 9. A structure is just really a tool to help you make your writing as clear and as easy to understand as possible. I've said that word clear maybe 50 times here, but that's really what it's about. And then your last point, you're talking about many tutors. And I'm not saying this because I want people to follow me, but I would really recommend follow one person that you trust. Um, because if you're going into the exam and you have 4 different structures in your head and 4 different conflicting pieces of information, then your writing will reflect that, and your writing is a reflection of your thinking, and then you'll be like, oh, I don't
Very
know what to do, and everything. So that just following that advice can really help people. Is there anything else you'd like to share with if you wanted to give advice to you 6 months ago, what would it be?
Um, be confident. Be confident and don't let difficulties like bring you down. And this is true even like in anything about life is like
Mm-hmm.
this place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially with IELTS, it's as I said, as I wrote in my post, it takes fortitude, it takes commitment, it takes a strong will,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very easy to procrastinate,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very good at that. But I think if you remember why you're doing it, and if you remember your goals, it
Yeah.
makes things
Yeah.
easier.
I mean, that's great life advice in general. When you're trying to learn something new, you're going to feel very uncomfortable and you're going to fail. And human beings like to feel comfortable and they don't like to fail. So you're going to have to push forward through discomfort and constantly having little mini failures. But the 2 things to remember is, number one, each failure or each mistake is an opportunity to get better, and then you'll move forward. And also what you said, remember why you're doing it. So if you're struggling, think about, like, for you, it means I can do a master's and get a really good career, and that's a really good opportunity. For someone else, it could be, it will be a better life for my family, or it could be I'll make more money, or it could be I want to get out of this country and move to a different country. Remember your why, and that will help you. Because even in my life, it's not easy what I do every day. I have struggles, but I just think of my son and my wife, and I want them to have a better life. And anybody who we work with, it's really successful, they normally have a very strong why about why they're doing that. So a mindset is so important, and you probably are sick of me talking about mindset all the time, but it really is.
And then another thing in terms of speaking, I had my strongest skills has always been listening, because as I said, I've been living in this country for nearly 5 years. But what I found difficult with the speaking was that I know many words, but when I like on the spot in the moment when I have to think about the right words, it's like my brain start thinking, oh, I know that word, but I
Mm,
can't recall right now.
mm,
And so my suggestion for the speaking is there. When you learn new words, try to incorporate them daily.
mm.
Every time you can, because there's no point in learning like list of words if you
Yeah. It's related to passive and active vocabulary. So everyone has a very big passive vocabulary, words they know, and a much smaller active vocabulary words they can use. So I would recommend when you're practicing and when you're preparing, take lots of chances with words you are not too sure about. Make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, and that will move those words from your passive into your active vocabulary. But on test day, use the words you're 100% sure about, because you're not, if you try to use words that you're not sure about, number one, you'll make lots of mistakes, which will lower your score for vocabulary. And then you'll also have problems with fluency, because you're trying to access all of those words that they're not in your active vocabulary, and you're like, it's like, and then you can have a problem with your fluency. So that's great advice, Rossella. So I know you're in Australia, so it's getting late there, even though it's just 10 a.m. here. So I'll let you go. But thank you so much, Rossella, for sharing that. That's great information for people, and anybody watching this, that I would strongly recommend following Rossella's advice. And what will you be able to do now? Are you going straight into your master's?
I finished, so I graduated in December actually.
Okay.
Yes, I needed my IELTS for the skill assessment and for permanent residency, to apply for the permanent residency,
So you're
which
going
is
into
a very,
teaching now?
yes. So
Excellent.
yeah, I'm waiting for my skill assessment. I can go into teaching
Excellent.
and then the rest.
So
It's yet
I
to
hope you
come.
use some of the things that we taught in your teaching as well.
And yes,
Excellent.
so that,
Thank you so much, Rosella. And if you need anything in the future, always stay in touch. And if you need anything, just let us know.
worries, Chris, and enjoy your holiday. Very well deserved.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.